Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. We are back here with Firewood guy in his firewood yard. He's got a new log splitter that he wanted to show us that I'd be willing to bet many of you have not seen before. And I know that because there are some 9 or 10-year-old videos of this log splitter on YouTube that only have 3,000 or 4,000 views a piece. And I haven't seen anybody else except for the company make the videos on this log splitter that we're going to show you here today.
Yeah, and I ran into the same thing when I was shopping for a splitter to kind of improve the process. The salesman was sending me down one road, and I didn't even know about this company. And when I kind of put up a little resistance about some of the limits of the other machine, he said, well, I've got a larger machine. It's a little more robust. Maybe you'd be interested in that. And so I went, they sent me some videos. I went and looked at them, and I was kind of like let down a little bit by the content. There wasn't a lot of great content on it. There was no audio. There's nobody like explaining the machine. And I have to admit, when it showed up, I kind of stuck my head inside and I was like, wow, maybe this was a little too much.
Yeah.
But we ran it a little bit yesterday. This is our first little test with it, just to see how well it does, how we can improve the process. But we'll show you how we're doing it right now today for the test. And then we'll bring you back once we get everything set up the way we want it to see how much more efficient we've made it.
So you've got a pretty beefy firewood processor here. How is this new log splitter going to improve your process from what you already have?
Yeah, so we do a lot of fireplace wood. Most of our customers are burning for enjoyment, not for heat. We do sell a lot of heating wood, but predominantly cooking wood. So even a piece of wood like this size, this would go through our 6-way, one stroke and be done. But some of these bigger ones, I mean, we're all looking at the small ends here, but on the other end, there'll be 3 or 4 sections that'll get recycled back through the splitter to make the size that we're looking for.
So push it through the wedge, pull a piece of wood back, push it through the wedge again.
Yeah, which has been, I think you can see it in the firewood processor market. Every firewood processor company is trying to come up with a solution to reduce resplitting. You know, and there's a million different ways to do it. This is how we decided to do it. I'm not a big fan of box wedges. I don't like having to force the wood through and make it the size you want. I like something that floats, which both this processor and that auto splitter, they kind of float around the grain a little bit to give you that natural split look.
Instead of shearing it off.
Right, and still give you that uniformity you're looking for. And, you know, cycling back through the splitter, it just takes time. At the end of the day, it adds up to more hours per cord. And all the big processor companies like Blockbuster, it doesn't matter who you talk to, they all have ratings on their processors. And they all rate them. Blockbuster's probably the most conservative. Like whenever I've bought a machine, if it's rated for 2 cords an hour, I can easily, realistically, with real firewood, get 2 cords an hour. The companies that claim it's 6 cords or 8 cords, they're putting great big wood on there. They're running it through the splitter one time. It goes up the conveyor, and it's great for fuel wood, or it's great for outdoor boiler wood, but it's not great for most of the customers that I service.
So real quick, let's show them, before we get to the new wood splitter, let's show them the firewood process you have here. So what is this?
This is a model 1820 plus. I bought this a few years ago. If any of you follow the firewood market, you'll understand that Blockbuster actually quit making firewood processors for a couple of years. They recently went through an acquisition. They're back to producing their full lineup of processors. This is like their middle size processor and the most popular. I started with a 1412, which is the smallest processor they make. And I wanted to jump to the biggest firewood processor they made. And the salesman really talked me through, you know, why do you want to go with a bigger processor? And he said, what size wood do you run? How often are you resplitting? And he said, listen, let's save you some money. This processor will do everything that you need to do in your business. You don't need that great big thing. And he was right. I've been happy with it. It's worked really well for us. The main difference between this model and my old model is this is what they call an offset machine, where the splitter sets away from the log trough, so the log comes in. My old processor, the log would fall straight down to the splitter. This one has a tilt tray that helps hold the last piece you need to cut and rolls it down into the splitter. And I like it.
So instead of just coming in, dropping straight down and through a splitter, comes in, cuts, and then rolls down into the splitter tray over here and then up and out. And then you've got a conveyor set up here that goes out to firewood baskets to go into the kiln, right?
Right. Or that's set up as a bunker. It's all concrete around, so we can just fill the bunker, scoop it with a loader, carry it up to our bigger building.
Yeah. And then we'll head over and show you the new machine. There it is, right over there. We'll head around to the other side so you can get a better look at it. All right, Matt, show me the new baby here.
Yeah, so this is, I really am a big fan of buying American made, but as my research, I looked for a company in the United States that made a machine like this, and I don't believe they exist. If there is one out there, please point it out. But this company's from Italy. It says on their tag they've been in business since 1979, and if you look at the way it's built, I believe that that's how long they've been in business, because it's really an efficient machine. It's just a splitter, it's not a processor. They do sell a whole, like you could fill a factory with an automated firewood process from them, log chop saws, log decks, splitting equipment. I don't know if they sell packaging equipment. I haven't really looked that far, but.
All right, so show me, how does this thing work and how is this going to improve your process better than, let's say, a box wedge or most of the other commercial grade log splitters that you see on the market?
Yeah, so this is.
And why is it different?
This is different mainly because it's adjustable. You don't have to switch wedges. If you want bigger wood, you change some settings on the automated splitter, it makes bigger wood. You want to make smaller wood, you change a couple settings, it makes smaller wood. So all these walls are adjustable. They slide in and out for different, like firewood right now, it's set for our standard 16-inch. You would roll the rounds in this conveyor and they advance forward down to the splitting chamber. And it's a little hard to get footage inside the chamber, but if you kind of poke up in there, you can
Yeah, so this door up here opens up, right?
Yeah.
So this is what they call a progressive style splitter, right? Where
Correct.
you basically load the rounds, you buck up the rounds either with a chainsaw or how you're doing it is you're using the firewood processor to buck up the rounds. Then you're taking them from the processor, putting them on the in-feed conveyor of this Pinosa. They automatically feed in the conveyor, and then you have this X-style wedge. And so what happens is this press plate comes out, applies pressure between your push plate here and the push plate here to lock the log into place, and then your X-style splitter comes through and splits the log. Well, again, you can see that would make giant splits if you had big wood coming in through here, but what it does then is it progresses the log through 2, 3, 4 inches, whatever you set the computer to or program it to, so it will then move the log ahead 2 inches and then split it again, and then move the log ahead another 2 inches and then split it again. And so that way when you come out the other end, you can take, doesn't matter the size of the wood you have going into it, everything is going to come out exactly like what you want to sell. Now, my question is, a box wedge does a similar thing, right?
Yes.
It'll split very similar wood no matter what you put in it. The only difference you might see with this is the amount of waste that comes off of this. You probably haven't run it enough to talk about how much waste comes off of it.
No, and I mean, to be honest, my first impression is it makes quite a bit. Like this is like a little smaller than what we want to see. This piece is perfect. And it makes a lot of those, but it makes what I call chaff, or this stuff. It does make quite a bit of it. Not until we dry it, stack it, and see how much we end up with will we really know. Whenever you improve a process to make a more uniform product, these pieces aren't perfect pieces of wood, so you're going to get that. You just kind of have to weigh, does the loss make up for the efficiency?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, the machine doesn't make sense.
And the other thing you were trying to get rid of too, instead of going with a box wedge, is some of that shearing off of the wood. Have you noticed that this makes more uniformly split wood like you were hoping and less shearing?
Yeah, it does. And you can get the same uniformity with a box wedge, but you are going to get a lot more of that. I don't know, I think it looks ugly, where you can see where it just rammed it through there. This is more like a knife cut. It allows the wood to kind of float through irregularities instead of forcing it through a 4-inch by 4-inch hole.
Looks more like it was split with an axe than a big commercial.
Right, and that's really what we're after. We're after good-looking wood that fits the customer's need, that goes through our process well and efficient.
Yeah. All right, so before we get into the new machine and show you how it works and functions, I thought I would show you just a little bit of Matt's old process and what they were trying to get away from. Now, Matt has been doing this process for years and years, and it has worked well for them. He's made a lot of firewood this way. but you can see what they're having to do is pull back a lot of those splits that come off of the 6-way wedge a little bit bigger than what he would like and re-split them. And that's just more strokes on the machine. And like he said, that's more hours per cord that it takes. And the business that he's in with as high volume as he is, he really needs to try to lock down efficiency as best as he can and get away from this re-splitting. Now, don't get me wrong, even the way that Matt used to make firewood is still faster than the way that you and I probably make firewood, but you can really see in this time lapse just how much resplitting they're doing. So that splitter ram is running an awful lot for how many times the saw stroke is running. What you really want is 1 for 1. 1 saw stroke, 1 splitter stroke, 1 saw stroke, and push every piece through 1 time, and that be the end of it. I think that's what he's going to be able to accomplish with this new machine. So now that you've gotten the gist of how he used to do things, now let's show you how he's incorporating this new Pinosa into the process. So Matt said he likes to let the guys get a little bit ahead on rounds before he fires up the splitter because it requires that entire infeed conveyor be full to apply pressure to the log in the splitting chamber to keep everything advancing. If you don't, it just won't advance the logs properly. And if he doesn't let the guys get ahead, they won't be able to keep up with his machine. Even using the processor to buck up the logs, he said when they're making regular bundle style firewood, this machine will split the wood faster than they can cut it and get it in the infeed conveyor. So he's got to let the guys get a little bit of a head start before he fires up the machine. So one benefit to this machine that Matt and I both talked about was the fact that it doesn't matter what size rounds you put into it. You don't have to change wedges to get a different end product. With most traditional splitters out on the market today, if you've got big rounds, you want to put an 8 or a 10 or a 12-way wedge on. If you've got small rounds, you want to use a 4-way or a 6-way wedge. With this one, there's no wedge changing. Doesn't matter what size logs go into it, you're going to get the same end product on the other end. Another thing that we talked about was that when you watch this machine in real time, it seems slow. I mean, you watch the cycle time, it's not terribly slow, it's not as slow as a box store splitter, but it just doesn't seem like overly impressively fast until you realize when you sit there and see what it does in a day's time, it just keeps going. As long as you keep that infeed conveyor full, it just splits and splits and splits. You don't have any of that in-between cycle time that you have when you've got to load the next log on or take your splits off. It just really is efficient. You can really see that in the time lapse here. They just keep coming in and they just keep going out. Now in terms of waste and chaff, you're still gonna have that with this machine. There's no way around it. Anytime you're trying to take a non-uniform raw material and turn it into a uniform finished product, you're going to have waste. There's no way around it. The only thing I could see would be taking a full-time employee and putting them on a machine like an Easton Made Axis or a single knife machine where you have total control over where the knife is going. But it's like anything else, you have to pick your battles. Sacrifice a little bit of extra waste for a tremendous amount of labor savings. So now that Matt finished 3.5 cords of regular 16-inch size bundle grade firewood in an hour and a half, he's now transitioning to another part of the firewood business, which is his mini firewood for things like pizza ovens or tabletop fire pits. And you can see the size that he chooses from that is 7.25 inches. And then he's adjusted the computer on the machine to only advance the logs 1.5 inches instead of 3.5 inches like he did for the regular bundle firewood. This is what I mean when I say this machine just keeps going and going and going. It doesn't look overly fast in real-time speed, but when you count what it's done and over the course of a full day, it's really incredible. So from the IBC totes, he then uses some rotating pallet forks to put it into his kiln baskets. These will then go directly into the kiln, and they will be USDA certified heat treated within a week and available for sale. All right, so Matt just finished your second day of running this machine. You did about, what, 5.5 cords today?
Yeah, 5.5 total.
I think you said you did 3.5 cords with the regular 16-inch firewood, and then you did about 2 cords of the mini firewood. And if I were you, I'd be pretty freaking ecstatic right now. This thing is awesome.
It is. It's slick, and it changes process from these size pieces, your normal standard bundle wood, to those size pieces in just a matter of 5 minutes, changing over a couple settings.
This has an onboard computer or something that
I haven't dug into it to really understand how it works, but it's got to have some kind of logic board. You program how far you want it to advance before it sends the next knife stroke out.
So if you look, we kind of diagrammed this a little bit. So when we change the settings for him to make his mini firewood, you can see how that X works. So basically the X comes through, splits the wood, advances the log another, what was this, 1.5 inches or inch and a half, and then runs that X through again. And so by the time you work that knife all the way through, it spits out perfect firewood like this. And then to go in and make regular 16-inch firewood that would be good for, you know, your indoor wood stove or fireplace or campfires, you just change the settings from 1.5 inches to, what was this, 3.5 inches?
3.5, yep.
3.5 inches. So very simple concept of how it works, obviously much more complex in how it's manufactured and everything, but from cutting the wood to, once you cut the wood and load it in the hopper here, this does everything else. The biggest thing you have to, biggest challenge you have is just keeping up with the outfeed of where you're putting it. And
yeah, just babysitting it, really. Keeping rounds in, keeping stuff coming out the other end, make sure it's not hung up or stalled or for any, and we don't have too much of that today. We had a few times we had to intervene, but
the one drawback that we've seen so far is occasionally if a split kicks up, it'll lift the lid on this. And when it does that, there's a safety feature built in that when that lift is raised, it kills all the hydraulics in the machine. So it'll stop running. So then you have to come in here and get that out to be able to close the lid all the way back down again. Now, one thing we were talking about was, you know, this will allow you to make a tremendous amount of firewood in a hurry. We talked about you made 3.5 cords of the 16-inch firewood in an hour and a half.
It's about an hour and a half.
Which means you are taking rounds that are cut up and you're able to turn them into firewood at a rate of 2 1/3 cords per hour. Is what that works out to. And then this stuff was about 1/4 an hour.
Yeah.
Because it's so small, you're only advancing it 1.5 inches at a time instead of 3.5 inches. So it takes longer to make this. And we were talking about, okay, now you can make firewood really fast. Not that you couldn't before, but you can make it even faster now.
Right.
You're basically just trading money for labor. Your labor savings, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so you could do the same thing with a chainsaw and an axe. You're not going to have the upfront investment in a big splitter or a big processor, but you're going to be limited by what your body can do and the amount of labor that you can put to it. So here you might have the same amount of labor. You have 2 guys or 3 guys. You can throughput a lot more wood in those 2 hours than you can if those 3 guys were sitting there trying to do this by hand. Not to mention day after day of doing that. I mean, there's not many people that can hold up to that.
Yeah, I always say you can make 20 cords of firewood with a chainsaw and an axe, or you can go out and buy a real expensive firewood processor and make 20 cords of wood. You're not going to be squeezing any more dollars or profit out of that 20 cords of wood. The idea behind investing in this equipment is to be able to make more and sell more and do more volume.
Right. And like for us, the firewood it's an integral part of the business, but it's not the entire business. So we try and make the most of the free labor that we do have. So we're not producing firewood all day, every day, day in and day out. So when we have free time or it's a slower part of the season, that's where we come over here and we'll make some firewood for a while. So we've gotten to the point where we sell enough. We've just had to get a little more efficient so that we could make the orders that we do have in a reasonable amount of time.
Speaking of other parts of the business, we've shown you guys before their mulch business. And so you go around to a bunch of local sawmills, collect the slabs from the sawmills, pile it up in the yard back there, and we've shown drone footage of acres and acres and acres of piles of slabs back there. And that was not that long ago. That was a couple months ago, right?
Yeah.
And since that time, I sent the drone up again, and we talked about how in a couple months, all of that would be gone. And sure enough, here we are in July, and all those acres and acres and acres of slabs are now gone.
They're all gone.
We've
got some cleanup to do, which is what we do when we get to this time of the year, but all the bulk piles are consumed.
Yeah. So I don't know about you guys. I think this is, as of right now, this is the coolest piece of firewood equipment I have seen. And it's probably, I'm the most excited about a piece of firewood equipment since I've seen Easton Made come out with the box wedge on that 37D with the diesel engine. I think this is very cool. And the thing that blows my mind is, we talked about it in the beginning of this video, there's been YouTube videos on this from Pinosa,
Yeah.
the company, for 9-10 years, and nobody here in the US has seen it. It seems like it's a very European machine that I haven't seen a lot of out there on YouTube. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below of this machine. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.